Insurance professionals work hard every day to keep people safe. But as technology transforms the industry, how can insurers protect not only their clients, but also shield themselves from ever-changing cyber risks? My name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm the host of the Insuring Cyber Podcast, a bi-monthly look into how the world of cyber and the business of insurance are connected. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Insuring Cyber Podcast final quarterly Insuretech update of 2023. And it's a good one. I just got back from the Insuretech Connect conference at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas last week. It was my second year attending that conference, and it was a whirlwind week where I got to meet a lot of new Insuretechs doing innovative things in the space, listen in on some fascinating panel discussions, and conduct some interviews. Stay tuned to Insurance Journal TV, and you should see some of those interviews in the coming days. The buzzwords at this year's conference were definitely generative AI, as well as embedded insurance and distribution, which were recurring themes of last year's conference too in the conversations that I had. The conversation around AI has seemingly moved away from speculating about how it's going to redefine the insurance industry to watching that already take place. Now it seems that many companies aren't asking themselves whether they should embrace AI, but how and in what areas of their business, because it's already here. And it sounds like a lot of experts I spoke with expect it to be here to stay. I did have a chance to catch up with two Insuretech experts for this podcast while at the conference, and I really enjoyed our conversations. Beyond AI and the state of Insuretech as a whole, we talked about steps that companies and their insurers can take before a cyber attack takes place and immediately after. So I was able to get some good insight on how companies and their insurers should be operating throughout the whole life cycle of a cyber attack. My first guest was Xing Xin, CEO and co-founder of Upfort, a cybersecurity and insurance AI platform that provides holistic protection from cyber threats. In addition to presenting a demo for Upfort while at the conference, Xin sat down with me in the press room to discuss the importance of cyber insurance in an evolving threat landscape, how businesses can capitalize on AI, and what companies and their insurers can do ahead of time to prepare for a cyber attack. He had a lot of great insights. Check out our conversation. Hi, Xin. It's great to be speaking with you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. I know we're at Insuretech Connect in Las Vegas at Mandalay Bay, and there's a lot going on. So thanks for taking the time to chat with me. And, I wanted to talk about some of the ways that companies can sort of prepare ahead of time to prepare for a cyber attack and how you're seeing AI being used to help with that. But before we get into that, I was just curious if you could give an overview of your background and some of the work that you do at Upfort.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Upfort. Upfort is a cybersecurity platform that empowers brokers and carriers to deliver comprehensive cyber risk solutions. So my background, I'm actually trained as a systems engineer and data scientist. So I started off my career as a management consultant, really at the intersection of predictive modeling and organizational restructuring. But for the past decade plus, I've been building high growth startups, really focused on using data to really enhance and improve the customer experience. And I actually see a lot of those same threads around how we can drive better cyber risk management and better cyber insurance through better data and better user experiences.
My next question was just, I know that there's a lot of talk about getting ahead of cyber risk, especially in this current environment where risks are changing all the time.
Yeah.
So what are some practical steps that you've noticed companies can take to sort of get ahead of the threats or at least prepare for them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great question. Things change so fast in this landscape. But the really interesting thing is when we look at the loss data, it's really about taking action on what some people might call the basics around managing their what we call the attack surface, right? What are the ways that a cyber criminal can get into your organization? Cyber criminals are very financially motivated. So what happens is that there's actually only a small handful of ways that they can, in a cost-effective way, get into your organization. And that translates to, are they sending your employees something to get them to either send something they shouldn't, click something they shouldn't, or download something they shouldn't, right? That's a key driver of claims. So that's your human attack surface. And then there's a digital attack surface. So when you think about the digital attack surface, it's around, what are the internet-facing assets and systems that your company uses that are external facing? And it's really around, do you patch your vulnerabilities and keep your systems up to date? Are you configuring remote access in different ways to access your systems in a way that helps to provide the right level of security settings, right? And so honestly, when you simplify it, it's if you do those things really well, while also making sure that you are backing up your data and having a policy and testing those policies well so that you are ready for an incident, that will really get you really, really far.
Yeah, it sounds like all those basic foundational steps are always so important no matter how much the risk landscape changes. So that's good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. We see it being that the IT professionals today are under so much pressure, right? They're under so much pressure to do more with less. And it very rarely that an IT professional feels like they've got all the investment and tools that they wish they had or the hours in the day to handle all those things well. So my heart goes out to it. It's just so hard to really manage that so well these days.
Yeah, it's a tough job for sure and getting tougher all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I know that cyber insurance is a big piece of the puzzle as well. So I was wondering if you could talk about the importance of companies having cyber insurance.
100%. I mean, cyber insurance is such a critical tool, right? When you think about having a policy and having a approach to handling incidents and incident response, well, one of the best partners and tools you can have as part of managing that risk is a cyber insurance policy. One critical tool that we see so many folks get great value from is, what if something looks uncertain and you're not sure if you've really had an incident, right? You have one phone call will get you the right experts, leading experts on the other line to help you figure out, hey, what might have happened here? Are we truly affected? And is there anything that we need to take to mitigate this issue, right? So it's not just about covering a financial loss by itself. Of course, that's a very, very important element. But really, cyber insurance is such a great tool and access to the right experts and the right data and the right expertise to be a really good partner in managing your cyber risk, especially if there has been a incident, to help make sure that your company is properly managing your exposure.
Yeah, that's true. It's so important. And I know AI is such a big topic of conversation right now in the industry, and I know that Upfort is an insurance AI platform.
Yeah.
So could you talk about how you've seen AI impacting the cyber threat landscape and some of the work that you're doing as a company?
Boy, I can talk all day about this. And frankly, I sit in a really unique position because my last Insuretech that I was building was actually an AI company using computer vision to help auto insurers automate claims. So I'm very familiar with really injecting AI into how companies work and how companies can create value using AI. But it's such a two-sided coin here today with regards to AI and cyber risk because of how much the tools have improved and enhanced capabilities for just a single person or a small group of people to really do what typically required a lot more people to do. Well, on the bad actor side, we're already starting to see cyber criminals incorporating AI to better and develop malicious software faster, right? That's one element. We actually seen another big trend, which is really scary. If you think about sophisticated security attacks, right? A lot of people think about purely around, there's a hacker in a hoodie launching some crazy attack, but actually, one of the key attacks that we see constantly evading systems today and typical filters and actually getting companies into trouble is just text-based emails around social engineering and phishing, right? And the way to do a very sophisticated attack is, you have to be able to research at scale and make it feel really tailored. Well, that's one thing that generative AI is really good at today, right? Processing large amounts of information, distilling that information, and then automating a lot of the steps it takes to actually drive that. So we're already starting to see it, and I expect to see even more, very tailored, sophisticated attacks on even the smallest companies, because the cost to do that today for a cyber criminal has just gone down so much more. But on the flip side, we see so many opportunities to use that both in cybersecurity prevention and defenses, along with actually improving cyber insurance as well. And so we think about it a couple different ways. One way we think about it is from a defense perspective, right? There are ways to improve the detection of some of the really sophisticated attacks when you leverage it the right way, using both the data, kind of some proprietary that we have, but also just kind of incorporating that as part of the prevention and identification elements. Another thing that's really hard to solve that could be helped by generative AI is really around the cybersecurity skills gap, right? There's millions of unfilled cybersecurity jobs, and it sometimes feels like it's a unsolvable gap. And, to a certain extent, some of the AI can help to really provide and democratize some access to some expertise as necessary. So that's one element that we, personally, we are investing in, but also we think is a trend in terms of driving automation within security analysis and functions. But purely, let's think about the insurance landscape, right? I think there's so many things that we can help to reduce expense ratios and improve processing of some of the very manual things that are going on today through generative AI, whether it's around automatically processing certain applications that are PDFs or written pieces. That's one great use case. Another great use case is really around we get access to a lot of security data, and simply, we talked about before, digesting a lot of data and then driving and grabbing the insights and filtering that summary down is something that Gen AI does really well. And so that's another use case in which we're thinking about when you have an explosion of potential underwriting data to really analyze. AI is a really interesting tool in order to help augment your underwriting analysis.
It's so interesting. You're right. This could be an hour-long conversation.
Yeah, I can talk all day, right?
Yeah. No, it's fascinating because there are some challenges, as you mentioned, but a lot of opportunities. So it'll be really interesting to see how the space evolves in the future. And this has been a great conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elizabeth. It's been so great chatting with you.
I wish I had more time with Xin because what he has to say about AI was so fascinating. And as much as we're hearing about it in the industry already, there always seems to be more to learn. I was glad to get to sit down with him during the conference. My next guest had equally great insights to share. David Derigiotis, Chief Insurance Officer at Embroker, has more than 20 years of experience in the insurance industry, with expertise in complex cybersecurity exposures, data privacy law, regulatory requirements, and emerging technologies like blockchain and cryptocurrency. He spoke on a panel at Insuretech Connect covering cybersecurity and advising on what to do after a cyber attack occurs. He has lots of experience in this area, and I was happy to speak with him about some of the best steps companies can take in the wake of a cyber attack and how their insurers can advise and work with them. He also spoke with me about what we learned from the major attacks of 2023 and what insurers should be keeping on their radar regarding the emerging risk landscape next year. He had so much knowledge to share, and he was such a pleasure to speak with. Here's what he had to say. Hi, David. It's great to be speaking with you today. How are you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. Yeah, thanks for taking the time. I know it's a busy conference at Insuretech Connect in Las Vegas, so I'm happy to be speaking with you for a little bit.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could start off with an overview of your background and some of the work that you do at Embroker.
Yeah, you got it. So I've been in the specialty insurance space for about 20 years. My background started off with underwriting complex professional liability technology risks. From underwriting on the carrier side, I moved over to the wholesale broking side. And I oversaw all of our national operations as related to professional liability, cyber liability, tech risk, healthcare, D&O, everything under the specialty professional in cyberspace. So I undersaw our broking operations as well as underwriting for a large wholesaler. From there, I moved over to the Insuretech side of the house, which is where I am now at Embroker. And I serve as the Chief Insurance Officer, and I oversee all of our specialty program development. I oversee underwriting, reinsurance, our sales, revenue, and distribution operations for the company.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm excited to be talking to you because you have great background and experience in this industry. And I know this conference, there's so much going on and so much being talked about, but what are some of the biggest takeaways for you from the conference so far?
Well, I think it's what can the insurance industry do to be more forward-thinking, of course. So how can we utilize technology to be more client-centric? How can we be more focused on removing friction points from the buying process? Insurance is a very old industry, and it feels that there has not been as much change, at least at the rapid pace that we've seen from other industries, looking at the banking and financial services industry, the retail industry, healthcare. So I think it's just coming to grips with how can we be more efficient, how can we better serve our client base, and do it in a way that really meets the client where they are. That's where this industry is going.
Yeah, and that's so important. It's such a people-focused industry that meeting a client where they are is top of mind for everybody.
Yeah.
And I know you were speaking on a panel, you mentioned some points about how to manage after a cyber attack, and I was wondering if you could talk about some of the most important steps that companies can take to do that.
You got it. I think it's all about preparation. You have to absolutely, before a security incident takes place, you have to think through what are the steps that we need to take when something does occur. How are we going to identify the issue that happened? How are we going to remediate? How are we going to restore data? How are we going to, from a PR standpoint, communicate to our clients, our employees? So really it's all in the prep. Before something happens, it's having an incident response plan in place. It's knowing exactly what roles people are going to take on, what their work is going to be, what they're going to do within the company, whether it's working with HR and it's going to be dealing with employees, if it's on the sales and marketing side, dealing with external customers and clients and vendors. You have to have that action plan in place to know exactly what to do so you can snap into action immediately. And I think a lot of it comes down to training as well, making sure that employees know exactly what they need to do in terms of warding off any type of social engineering attacks, any type of phishing emails that come in. So this is all done before there's an incident. So you do as much preparation as possible so that when the incident does happen, the company will respond effectively, efficiently, and they'll be able to continue having trust with clients when that day does happen.
Yeah, that's such important advice. There's so much to think about with cyber attacks that having a plan in place to make it more efficient is so important. And then what about for insurers? What are some of the steps that they can take to sort of work with their clients and help them manage through an attack or prepare, as you said?
I think what they can do is a lot of what we're seeing here at the conference today. And it's coming up with new innovative ways to be able to provide risk management services to, again, be customer-centric. It's not just financial risk transfer when it comes to cyber insurance like you see in other lines of business. It's bringing together cybersecurity services, bringing together risk management services alongside the policy. That's where there's huge benefit that can be offered. So insurers can make those types of services, training available, making sure that they're helping customers get into regulatory compliance with a variety of state privacy laws or federal privacy mandates that they have to adhere to. HIPAA, for the healthcare space is one that comes to mind. So that's what we're seeing here at Insuretech Connect. It's marrying together risk management technology alongside the insurance component. That's where there's huge value, and that's what we're seeing more of. It's more of the value-added services before an attack occurs, bringing that to the insured, bringing that to the client so that they can better strengthen their business, have a better security posture, and in the end, everybody wins from that. The insured's going to win because they'll be a more secure business, they'll be able to offer greater value to the customers and clients and vendors that they work with, and of course, the insurers win as well because they're insuring and providing coverage for a better risk. Somebody that's going to have a stronger security posture, somebody that's going to be more elevated in terms of their ability to respond and be prepared compared to somebody who's not.
Right, that makes sense. It's a win-win for everybody.
Yes.
So that's great. And I was curious about this question. It might differ based on the type of attack, but what are commonly some of the first signs of a cyber attack, or what should people be looking out for?
Yeah, it can definitely vary. With a ransomware attack, right away. With a ransomware attack, the employee's sitting at their desk. All of a sudden, the systems, the data is inaccessible because the file's locked up, and then you have the attacker that's communicating with them via some type of messaging app, or they want to be able to guide them through the process to be able to send Bitcoin, whatever it is that they need to do to get access back to their information. Ransomware attacks, right away. It's instant. When there's an unauthorized access and the company's not prepared because they're not able to identify unusual behavior, that's where it takes a little bit more time. I've seen companies go several months where they have no idea that somebody's in the system. because they don't have the right protections in place to understand that there's strange behavior taking place from somebody's account. They're logging in to a system at a strange time. Maybe it's in the middle of the night. They're accessing different systems that they normally wouldn't access. You can catch those things when you have the proper technology in place. A lot of organizations just simply don't have it. So that behavior goes undetected for quite some time. In other cases, a company may find out from a third party, they find out from a vendor, or they find out from customers that are having unusual activity taking place in their account. So it's such a variety. Sometimes it's right away, like we see with ransomware. Other times when unauthorized access occurs and you have a threat actor in the system for a while, a company can go several months before they even realize it.
Yeah, that's so scary to me. I've heard that before, that these attackers can live in systems for a really long time, and that's frightening. So it's good to always be paying attention and adhere to the advice you mentioned. And I know for some of the major events, of 2023, I'm curious, what are some of the biggest things that companies have learned that can sort of be applied going forward into 2024?
What a year it's been. So just thinking back through a timeline, looking back in March, there was the White House cybersecurity strategy that was released. And in that strategy, the White House talked about shifting the burden from individuals or businesses that have the breach to the technology service providers where the breach may have occurred. So if you're implementing software from different vendors and there's a vulnerability in that software, it's no longer going to be the company's responsibility, it's going to be that vendor. There has to be a law that's passed for that to take place, but you can see where that's headed. So that was a very big message, and I think ring for a lot of technology companies to be thinking about what type of laws may be coming down the line. Here we're in Vegas right now. We know that the MGM had a massive ransomware attack. Caesars had a massive ransomware attack. They're still assessing the total cost associated with it. Some of the figures we've seen around MGM are $100 million that it cost them. They're still not fully recovered from that breach. So those were two huge ransomware attacks. Clorox was another company that experienced a significant issue. You bring all of that together and tie it in with the regulatory environment. The SEC just a few months ago brought down new mandates for publicly traded companies in terms of the notification requirements. You have now 4 business days from the moment you identify a material incident to notify your investors, to notify your customers that there's been a breach. So public companies have to have their arms much more strongly around their security, around the data that they have. So we're seeing tightening on the regulatory side of things. You also have 12 states that have their own privacy law. We don't have a federal privacy law, so we're seeing increased regulation at the state level around privacy and cybersecurity. So you take those 12 states plus another 7 that still have active legislation. Right now, you can see the environment around the United States slowly starting to tighten, slowly starting to get their arms around independently different privacy facets that an organization will have to operate in compliance with. So you have a tightened regulatory environment, you have massive ransomware attacks taking place, and you have a possible shifting of liability from the business to the software vendor or provider. So all of that is going on, and I think it's interesting to look at the data. We had recently polled more than 500 venture capital firms to ask them what are they most concerned about. Cybersecurity was the number one issue. So you take this environment of increased threats, you take the environment of increased regulatory, and it's showing in the data that customers and clients are concerned about cyber risk. So I think it comes down to preparation. It was a great question you asked me about what can be done. I think the biggest takeaway is you have to prepare and you can never be complacent. Threats are always changing. We have artificial intelligence, good use cases, bad use cases in terms of security. So I think all of the things that a company can do beforehand to properly prepare themselves and get ready for an event, that's the big takeaway. Make sure that you're prepared so that when something does happen, it won't be a surprise. You'll know exactly what to do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so important. And there's so much to learn from, like you said, it's been such a big year for cyber threats. So there's a lot to learn going into 2024. Yeah. And thank you so much for everything that you shared. I've learned a lot, and it's been great to speak with you.
My pleasure. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this Insuretech update recorded at the Insuretech Connect conference in Las Vegas. I look forward to that event every year and was so glad to meet so many listeners while there. Thanks to Xin and David for taking the time to speak with me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Once again, my name's Elizabeth Blossfield, and I'm the host of the Insuring Cyber Podcast, a bi-monthly look into how the world of cyber and the business of insurance are connected. Be sure to check back for new episodes publishing every other Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts. Talk to you next time.